the universal classic horror films were the ones that really grabbed me. You know, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy. And again, we all saw them on television. And you know, I mean, so many of us, you know, like you said, kids of the 50s, that's where we were exposed to that stuff. And then Famous Monsters of Filmland came out, and it, you know, that's where I learned that people, you know, did this for a living. And I just said, well, that's what I want to do.
No, it's cooler than that. When he was a kid, he wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to be Dr. Frankenstein and create monsters. No, seriously. And then what changed it?
Doctors didn't make monsters. I wasn't until I was about 10 years old that I was a pretty stupid kid, I guess. You know, and then I realized, like I said, you know, Famous Monsters said, you know, Jack Pierce.
Famous Monsters. You went, wait a minute, makeup men make monsters.
John Landis is the one that really got me interested in this genre. I was more into dramas and musicals because of the stuff my dad shot. But John is the one that really got me to focus in on this. And, you know, it's a real tribute. It's so nice to see so many people here, you know, to watch the screening. I can't wait to see it.
Rick and George read my screenplay for An American Werewolf in London in 1971 when we made Schlock. I had written it in 1969 in the former Yugoslavia. I was a schlepper on a movie called Kelly's Heroes. And I'd written it then, and it actually got me work as a writer. I got the James Bond job because Cubby Broccoli on The Spy Who Loved Me loved that script. And I said, want to produce it? Hell no. It's weird. But that's how I got the job as a writer. Anyway, but no one would make it. They just thought it was too odd. But I had this very specific metamorphosis in mind and a four-legged wolf. It really works, and I think really the main reason it works I'm in the middle here, is because David Naughton and Griffin and Jenny Agutter and John Woodvine, I had a wonderful cast. And he really and Rick Baker, they really made it work. I really felt strongly I may have been wrong, but I felt strongly I didn't want famous actors. I wanted to use as unknown as possible, and everyone knows that David, well, you had a TV series and hit songs, and he was the Dr. Pepper guy. And honestly, he was honestly, when I saw those, who made those commercials?
Melvin Sokolsky.
Because when I saw those commercials, do you remember he would be dancing and singing and stuff? I thought, you know, this is such a stupid commercial, and he is so winning. You really like him. And that's why I wanted to meet him, honestly. I wanted to see you for that. And because you really have to like David.
He asked, you know, what would it take to do this? And what you know, I want this to be really cool, and I want it to be done the best way it could be done. And what would it take? And I said, you know, time and money. You know, I mean, at that point, you know, Schlock, you know, we had very little money and very little time to make this stuff, and that's the way films were at that time. And he said, okay, well, what do you need? And I said, well, if I could get like 6 months and like, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I could do some really cool stuff instead of, you know, $1,000 in 6 weeks, you know. And he let me do that.
Well, the bravest thing, and George was my ally in this, the bravest thing we did is we didn't have a deal on didn't have a greenlit movie. We did because we made a negative pickup with Polygram Pictures, but we hadn't made the deal, and I wanted to shoot that winter, and we actually hired David and Griffin and made their deals, and we didn't have a movie to bring them out. Now I'll tell you.
Now you tell me. As soon as John said, okay, you're going to play this part of David, go right over to Rick Baker's shop, which I drove over, went over to introduce myself to John, to Rick and his group of young guys who, as we found out, were making their first horror film as well. And Rick said, which role are you playing? And I said, I'm playing David. He goes, I feel sorry for you. It is sort of tiring spending all day getting made up. Then you have to perform, and that was the challenge for me. The whole film had been wrapped. I knew where I was at this point, you know, when this transformation is going to come, because we've shot everything else. But it was really a matter of how are we going to do this? I'm going to do it over the top, and I really couldn't go over the top for John, it seemed. So there weren't any time he says, okay, bring it back, you know, bring that in. It's not that painful, or any of that stuff. It was just go for broke, and maybe we'll be done for the day. So we'll get to do it again tomorrow.